25 on one side, 30 on the other. Two nearly identical numbers that describe two worlds that bear no resemblance to each other. The first belongs to a group that set out in 1988 with a handful of priests. The second belongs to one of the richest, most organized, and most studied Catholic countries in the world. On paper, there shouldn't be a match, and in fact, there isn't. This isn't a polemic, nor is it anyone's opinion. These are order registers, lists of names and dates, published and verifiable one by one. And there's a third issue coming later that makes the first two almost a detail. It's worth waiting for until the end. The priestly fraternity of St. Peter celebrated 25 priestly ordinations in 2026. This is the all-time record in its history, and no previous year had even come close. 30 new priests are expected this year throughout Germany, 27 dioceses, approximately 19 million baptized Catholics, and 30 ordinations across the country. The fraternity was founded in 1988 by priests who had left the Society of St. Pius X after the consecrations of Icon, and who chose to remain in full communion with Rome by continuing to celebrate the ancient liturgy. 38 years later, that group ordains as many priests in a year as the entire German Church. From here on, only the numbers speak for themselves. The first figure is a stark comparison, and it's all on one line: 25 versus 30 in the same calendar year, between figures that aren't even comparable. 12 of those 25 ordinations were celebrated on May 28th at the Cathedral of St. Cecilia in Omaha, Nebraska, by Archbishop Thomas Wensky of Miami. 13 of them arrived in Lindenberg, Bavaria on June 20th at the behest of Bishop Mark Eilert of Bayonne. The candidates came from 9 different countries. 9 nationalities in a single group: France, Portugal, the Czech Republic, Austria, Croatia, Hungary, Italy, Poland, and Sweden. This isn't a phenomenon limited to one region. The second fact is the most shocking, and it doesn't concern the fraternity at all. It concerns the German dioceses, one by one. 11 out of 27 dioceses will not celebrate any priestly ordinations in 2026. 0 ordinations, not even one. This means 4 out of 10 German dioceses will not provide the Church with a single new priest this year. Among those 11 is the Archdiocese of Munich and Freising, the very heart of Catholic Bavaria, the same land where the Society ordained 13 in one afternoon. The third piece of data is the German timeline, and it should be read as a whole. 2024, 29 orders; 2025, 25, 2026, 30. 98 were the number of German orders in a single year, just over 10 years ago. From 98 to 30 in the span of a decade, in a country that hasn't gotten any poorer or smaller in the meantime. 549,000 Catholics have formally left the Church in Germany in the last year alone. It's as if an entire diocese, with all its faithful, had been erased from the registers in 12 months. The fourth fact concerns who those 25 are today. The fraternity has over 400 priests out of 579 members worldwide, trained between Nebraska and Bavaria. 39 is the average age of the entire fraternity, including seminarians and deacons. For a Western ecclesiastical institution, this figure is so low as to be almost anomalous. There are more than 100 seminarians at the Institute of Christ the King Sovereign Priest, another institution linked to the ancient liturgy. There, too, the trend is rising, while elsewhere, it's falling, and especially so in the United States. The community of San Martino has 117 seminarians, and this year it has brought 10 new priests to the altar, making it one of the leading sources of vocations in the French Church. The fifth fact is the one that turns the reading on its head, and it's the hardest for anyone to explain. It doesn't concern the order numbers, it concerns the minds of those who receive them. 68% of priests ordained in the late 1960s described themselves as progressive. 16% described themselves as conservative. 2% of priests ordained in recent years are progressive. 84% describe themselves as conservative. Two independent surveys say the same thing: the National Study of Catholic Priests and a 2025 study conducted by the Catholic University of America. Neither comes from traditionalist backgrounds. 60 years separate those two photographs. In between lies everything the Church has debated over these decades, and the result is an almost perfect reversal of the original proportions. The sixth piece of data serves to prevent a hasty conclusion and comes from the same source. In France, diocesan ordinations have increased, not decreased. 84 priests were ordained in France this year, around the feast of Saints Peter and Paul, 5 more than the previous year. 66 for dioceses, 18 for religious institutes. 7 in Paris, 6 in Versailles. These are not communities linked to the ancient rite. They are ordinary dioceses, and this year they performed better than last year. 17,700 catechumens were baptized in France at Easter in 2025. 10,300 adults and 7,400 adolescents, an increase of 45% and 33%. 20,000 pilgrims, with an average age of 22, walked the Chartres route, with participation growing by 45% in 3 years. This indeed is the world of ancient liturgy. The seventh figure further complicates the picture, and it concerns a country no one would have expected. In Poland, considered for decades one of Catholicism's most reliable sources of vocations, ordinations are declining again this year. There were 1,704 Italian seminarians at the beginning of this decade. In 1970, there were 637, more than triple the number, and the young male population has not decreased at the same rate. 88,000 seminarians are in missionary seminaries, mostly in Africa and parts of Asia, with 5,000 more candidates in 1 year and 23 new seminaries opened. 2 interpretations contend for these numbers. The first says the debate is over. Where the ancient liturgy has been preserved, vocations exist. Where attempts have been made to adapt to the times, they have disappeared. The second observes that a fraternity of 579 members and a national church of 19 million faithful are not comparable sizes, and that in France there is also a growth in things that have nothing to do with the ancient rite. A third voice, from the source that published these data, warns against both simplifications. It writes that signs of renewal and symptoms of crisis coexist, often separated by little more than a national border. One fact, however, none of the 3 readings can erase. In 1988, those priests were described by many as a small group of nostalgics destined to fade away within a single generation. 38 years later, that group ordains 25 priests in 1 year, has an average age of 39, and celebrates ordinations on 2 continents with candidates of 9 nationalities. The prediction was simply wrong. 11 German dioceses are not ordaining anyone this year. In 1988, that would have been a sentence impossible even to pronounce aloud. 50 years from now, someone will reopen these records and won't find the debates, documents, interviews, or controversies, they'll find 2 columns of names and dates. On one column, you'll read 9 countries, 2 continents, and an average age of 39. On the other, you'll read 11 dioceses, and next to each, the same number repeated 11 times. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment, Amen. God bless you.